All right, let's talk fights, shall we? UFC 251, 251, 251, whichever way you say it, went down Saturday night in Abu Dhabi. For me, it was an enjoyable night of fights. I'm not really going to go into great detail about each of the fights and kind of give my opinions about why fighter A beat fighter B or whatever. I'm just going to give a few observations that I've made having watched the fights and just the reaction of people after the event. So the first fight, Kamara Uzman against Jorge Masvidal. Look, I predicted that Jorge Masvidal was going to win this fight, and I did it on the basis of two factors. Firstly, I just knew, or I assumed, that there was going to be an upset on the card, and I bet on Jorge Masvidal causing that upset because of there's been like a shift of momentum with Jorge Masvidal over the last 18 months or so. And he's just skyrocketed in terms of popularity. But not just popularity, with each fight he's gained popularity, but also he's shown a side to himself, just a more kind of assertive, aggressive style of fighting in the octagon. And I felt like the trajectory that he kind of was on, beating Kamara Usman would be like the crowning moment for him and his career. The funny thing is, in my prediction video, I just kind of listed a set of features that favoured Kamara Usman's style, and I kind of, not to blow my own trumpet, but I was quite accurate in my assessment of what Kamara Usman needs to do to win this fight, and we saw how it played out, and we saw what Kamara Usman did. He was very, very, very effective. I just want to kind of say a couple of things about the actual fight, the fight itself. Firstly, I was impressed by Jorge Masvidal's ability to stuff takedowns, and I was very impressed by the way, when he was taken down, how he managed to get back up to his feet on a number of occasions. The thing that happened that I kind of thought would happen was how Kamara Usman controlled Jorge Masvidal up against the fence. And that happened, that was kind of like a running theme throughout the fight. The thing that I'm not going to say disappointed, because I appreciate Jorge Masvidal, didn't have a full training camp and all of that stuff. When Jorge Masvidal was able to get himself out of Kamara Usman's clinch, or he was able to get himself off of the ground when Kamara Uzman was controlling him, I was surprised, or I felt that I assumed going into the fight, Jorge Masvidal would, once he separates from Kamara Uzman, he would show more movement and kind of try and get back into the center of the cage. But during the fight, what I noticed was when he was breaking away from Kamara Uzman, he was just kind of being quite static and standing close to the fence, kind of inviting Kamara Uzman back in to try and secure a takedown, or just kind of control him against the fence again. Now, I don't know whether that's just Jorge Masvidal being tired, but I just don't know whether he's just conditioned the right way to be able to fight for 25 minutes with a man basically, wrestling and controlling him and just grinding him down like that. Do you know what I mean? So I don't even know if this fight happens again and he has a full camp, I don't know whether he'll be able to get the kind of cardio you need to be able to maintain your energy levels with a man who's just putting all his weight on you throughout the fight. Do you know what I mean? So the result of the fight wasn't really a surprise. Kamara Uzman was the favourite going in, and he proved why he was a favourite. There's a couple of things that I just wanted to talk about how people have reacted to the fight. So I've noticed people kind of saying how boring the fight was. I've noticed people talking about how Kamara Uzman lost the opportunity to catapult himself into kind of being a pay-per-view star because he didn't really push the issue, and he didn't push for a finish against Jorge Masvidal. And I've noticed a weird sort of opinion where people are basically saying, oh, if you don't appreciate what Kamara Usman did, you're a casual. If you didn't think that was entertaining, you're a casual and whatnot. So I just want to let you guys know where I stand on all of this. And the way I see it is, understanding something and finding it entertaining are two totally different things, right? So for example, I work in IT, so I'm a project manager. I understand the Prince 2 methodology to running a project. I understand it. Doesn't mean I find it entertaining. I understand certain principles when it comes to Microsoft technology and how to implement it into your customer's environment. Doesn't mean that's something that I do for fun. Do you know what I mean? So just because I didn't find the fight entertaining, it doesn't mean that I don't understand what Kamara Usman was doing and why he was doing it. So I found that fight quite boring, if I'm honest with you. And the thing is, the onus isn't just on Kamara Usman. Actually, he's the guy that's winning the fight. He's controlling how the fight is going. So the onus is on Jorge Masvidal to try and change the flow of the fight. And he just wasn't able to do it. So firstly, I don't think Kamara Usman should be getting blamed for the fight not being overly entertaining. And where people are saying he should have gone for the finish and he lost the opportunity to become a pay-per-view star, what a load of bollocks. That literally makes no sense. Like, with all of the stuff that we've seen go on between fighters and the organization, UFC, where they're kind of going back and forth about pay, etc., etc., the one tool that these fighters have as leverage is a title. And his job on Saturday night, and when I say his, I mean Kamara Usman, his job on Saturday night was to enter the octagon, defend his title, win that fight, and walk out the champion. And that's what he did. And the way in which he did it was effective. There wasn't a moment in the fight where he was in danger or where you felt that, oh, he might lose it here. So why should he risk everything that he's worked for and risk that belt, that championship, on almost like a bet, I don't know what the right word is, but why should he risk everything that he's worked for on something that isn't a guarantee that if I finish him, I'll become a pay-per-view star? I don't know why people just make these assumptions. That's not how things work. Do you know what I mean? Like, just by beating, by finishing someone that has kind of reached the next level when it comes to being a star in MMA, and just being a face or a name that casual fans recognize, just by achieving that status, if you beat that guy, that doesn't automatically mean that you're going to then just take that spot. You're going to take that position that he previously had. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make sense to me. So I suppose my opinion is, yes, I found the fight boring, but I understand why Kamara Usman fought in the way in which he fought. It's as much Masvidal's fault as it is Usman's fault. Like, Masvidal, was clearly losing the fight, so he could have risked something. Like, in the fifth round, he could have just started throwing haymakers and just hoped one landed. Do you know what I mean? So the onus is on both fighters that the fight wasn't really the most entertaining. And just because I found it boring, or people have found it boring, it doesn't automatically mean that they don't know what they're watching. So I just wanted to kind of make that clear. In terms of next fights for both guys, Kamara Usman, I've said this before, I'm not going to belabor the point. I think there's two people that are kind of in contention for a title shot at the moment: Gilbert Burns and Edwards. And I feel like Gilbert Burns is the guy that was given the title shot because of circumstance. And I feel like Leon Edwards is the guy that's actually earned a title shot. So the guy that should be fighting Kamara Usman for the title next is Leon Edwards. But just because something should happen, it doesn't mean that it will. And it's the UFC we're talking about. We're talking about Gilbert Burns, who was just pushed up the rankings to the top slot just because he was the guy that was available to fight Kamara Usman on relatively short notice to begin with. So I feel like Gilbert Burns will probably get the shot, but I believe Leon Edwards is the guy that actually deserves it. but we'll see. We'll see how things play out. Volkanovski against Holloway. So look, I predicted that Volkanovski was going to win this fight. But whilst watching it, I thought Max Holloway won the fight. So firstly, I just need to say that I made a couple of points in my prediction, and I was 100%, I have to hold my hands up, I was 100% wrong. One of the things that I said is, from memory, because I haven't watched the video back, I can't see what Max Holloway is going to implement into his strategy or game plan to avoid the low kicks that Volkanovski peppered him with throughout the first fight. And I questioned the mindset of Holloway going into the fight, because he was downplaying how effective those leg kicks were in kind of his media engagements in the build up to the rematch. So firstly, Max Holloway, it kind of felt like in the first fight, and I'm going to say this in a very non-technical way because I just don't know what the right terminology is. In the first fight, it felt like Max Holloway is just like kind of moving forward for the sake of moving forward, and Volkanovski, every time Holloway entered range, Volkanovski was just hitting him with a leg kick, a low kick, and it was stopping Holloway in his tracks, and Holloway was unable to kind of get off his punches as a result of that. In this fight, what I noticed is how Holloway it felt like he was being more intelligent in his movement, in the sense that he wasn't just moving forward for the sake of moving forward. He was kind of, taking steps back when he needed to. And one major thing that I noticed that wasn't happening in the first fight is every time Volkanovski threw a leg kick, Holloway threw one right back. And there were actually occasions where Holloway was kicking to Volkanovski's body. He knocked him down with a head kick, I think, in the first round or the second round. That was one of the knockdowns, was a head kick. And he was kicking a lot more, and that was clearly a strategy that they put into place to negate the threat of Volkanovski's leg kicks. Another thing that I said is I don't know who Holloway's team are, who his cornermen are, and I just felt like it didn't feel like that they were kind of in the modern era, I suppose is the right way to say it, in terms of how kind of coaches nowadays are focusing on a specific fighter and making sure that fighter is able to improve in different facets of the game. Whereas with Holloway, he kept talking about classes and stuff. And I think, why is he still going to classes? Why isn't he just having kind of one-on-one sessions where the coach is focusing on him improving attributes in his game? Clearly, obviously, I was wrong there, because I think Max Holloway won that fight, and he looked like a much improved fighter in this fight compared to the first fight. I scored the first 3 rounds to Max Holloway and the last 2 to Volkanovski. But like a lot of people have said, I'm not the first person that's going to say it, and I won't be the last. It wasn't a robbery, because that third round was razor close. Like, I think I even tweeted I was tweeting during the fight, so follow me on Twitter at The Battle Camp, and Instagram for that matter, at The Battle Camp. But I was tweeting about it, and I kind of said this is the closest round. Volkanovski's coming back into it. So it wasn't a robbery by any stretch of the imagination. I did feel like Max Holloway won that fight, but Volkanovski got the nod, and I'm not angry about it. I don't think it's a major illustration of how bad judging is and stuff like that. I don't buy into any of that stuff. But yeah, Volkanovski retains the title. I'm not sure who's next for him. That division, actually, the featherweight, I think, for me, is the most unclear division in terms of who's next in line for a title shot, because there's a number of fighters that are kind of, you can tell these guys are at the top of that division: Korean Zombie, Ortega, Zabit, Cater, people like that. But like, there's not one person that you can say this guy definitely deserves it. So I suppose that puts the UFC in a decent position, because I'm not sure who's booked in for a fight or who isn't. But they've got options in terms of an opponent for Volkanovski. They can go with Korean Zombie, they could go with Zabit, and I don't think they necessarily need to justify their decision, because this is actually a division where it's a little bit unclear. Like, going back to the welterweight division, where I was saying that I think Leon Edwards deserves the title shot, but Gilbert Burns got it just out of circumstance. Do you know what I mean? So, so it'll be interesting to see what happens next. I personally wouldn't mind to see them fight again, the trilogy, back to back. But I don't think that will happen. I don't think that's a viable sell. to the fans. Peter Yan against Jose Aldo. So I was correct in my prediction for this fight. The way it played out was quite... what's the right word? It was... The way the fight played out was how a lot of people anticipated it might go. I was quite surprised by the amount of people that were picking Jose Aldo to win. And I don't know whether that was just vets. I think Charles Sonnen, Dominic Cruz, a couple of others were picking Jose Aldo. And I think that was predicated on a couple of things. People remembering Jose Aldo at his peak, and also people second-guessing just how good Peter Yan is, because we haven't really seen him in there with the upper echelon of that division. I said the same thing in my prediction video. I just think Jose Aldo just isn't at the same level as he once was. And again, I'm not sure whether it's he's not at the same level or the game has just improved and he's still the same fighter, but people have just gotten better than the level of competition he was fighting back in the WEC days or his early days in the UFC. One thing that I just quickly want to add here is I've heard a lot of people, especially Ariel Helwani, kind of go in on the referee about stop the fight, oh, the fight should have been stopped 30 seconds before, 40 seconds before, blah blah blah, etc etc etc. And I get it. I get the motivation behind having that opinion, and I understand the thought process. I just don't think it's that deep. Like, every time the referee said to Jose Aldo, move, show me something, move, show me something, Jose Aldo moved and showed him something. He was... I don't know whether intelligently is a right word or is a word you can add before this, but he was defending himself. He had his hands up. And I couldn't see at any point during that barrage of unanswered shots that Aldo was close to being knocked out. Now I know that the referee's job isn't to wait until a fucking fighter gets knocked out unconscious. It's to assess whether that fighter is intelligently defending themselves, and to step in to protect the health and safety of both fighters, because that's the number one objective for a referee in the cage with two fighters. However, like, with the way it kind of unfolded, with it being in the 5th round, like, I struggle to get so upset with the referee on this occasion. Like, at the end of the day, these guys are fucking fighters. This is what they do for a living. And just because they're fighters, I understand, just because they're fighters, it doesn't mean that they have to take more damage than is necessary. I get that. And I do agree that the referee could have ended the fight sooner than he did. And maybe he was a little bit late. But I don't agree with the level of outcry that there is around it all. Do you know what I mean? And I think the reason why I don't necessarily agree with it is because this is what these guys sign up for. And as harsh as it sounds, this is literally what they do. They go into the octagon to inflict physical damage on their opponent. That's the aim of the game here. Do you know what I mean? And I don't know, I just think it's a little bit of, people just go a bit over the top in terms of just being too self-righteous almost. Like, oh no, it should have been stopped sooner, and he just took unnecessary damage, I'm really angry, I'm really upset. Until the next week when the next fight is, and you just forget about everything that you were angry and upset about. Like, in terms of the letter of the law, the referee followed the instructions that are given to him. Unless a fighter isn't intelligently defending themselves, you let the fight continue. Now, it's open to interpretation whether Jose Aldo was intelligently defending himself or not. I've seen a comment from Charles Sonnen when he said that with Jose Aldo curling up in a ball effectively, that was him basically giving the signal that stopped the fight to the referee. But obviously being too manly, or man might be the wrong word, but being too much of a warrior to, physically tap to strikes or tell the referee he's had enough. Do you know what I mean? Which is all well and good. Pride and ego are a massive part of fighting. But at the same time, I don't know whether the reaction matched the negligence of the referee. I got to make it clear, I do think the referee should have stopped it sooner, but I suppose what I'm trying to say is I can see why he didn't, because Jose Aldo was listening to his instructions. Move, show me something, and Jose Aldo was doing that. But if you just take the whole fight, the context of the fight, I can't remember how I was scoring it, but I think by that point in the 5th round, it was effectively a 3 rounds had been won by Jan, 1 by Aldo, and that 5th round was en route to being a 10-8. So it just looked like there was no chance that Jose Aldo was going to come back and win this fight. All the momentum was with Peter Yan. So if you look at it from that standpoint, you can say, yeah, fucking, he should have stopped it sooner. But as a referee, I believe they're assessing the action as it's happening, and it's not their job to think about, okay, well, the judges might have scored it this way, and Aldo's not really in this fight anymore from a scorecard point of view, and I don't think he's got anything left in the gas tank to knock Peter Yan out. So I don't really think he's got any opportunity to win this fight. So with that being said, let me just stop it now. Does that make sense? So I don't know. I just think unless the rules are changed and they're more black and white in terms of what kind of action needs to happen for a fight to be stopped, I don't know whether the referee made a huge mistake, and I don't know whether it's I just don't agree with the level of outcry, and it's just basically it's Ariel Helwani is the guy that I've seen doing it the most. I don't know whether it's an overall general consensus, but that's just my opinion about the matter. Next, Peter Yan, definitely Aljo. And I noticed that Dana White wouldn't really say in the post-fight press conference that Sterling is 100% the next guy in line, and I don't know why, and I don't know what his thought process is, because I can't see a clearer contender for the title shot than Aljamain Sterling. I believe he should have been in that fight with, I mean, if you really wanted Jose Aldo just because of his name value, I understand that, but it should have been Aljamain Sterling. Like, he was more of a I believe he had done more to deserve a title shot than Peter Yan did to begin with anyway. So I think, and I said in my prediction video that if Peter Yan or Aldo wins, they're not the bantamweight champion until they beat Aljamain Sterling, and I stand by that. But that division is fucking stacked. That is the most exciting division in the entire organization. The amount of names, and these guys are all either in their prime, approaching their prime, apart from Jose Aldo. And there's just so many fun matchups. And then not to forget, you got TJ Dillashaw due back, I think, at some point early next year or something like that. And next year isn't that far away. Kind of, we're in July now, so he could get booked into a fight in like February, March next year. So there's a lot going on, and it will be really interesting to see how that division unfolds itself. Rose Namajunas against Jessica Andrade. So I predicted Thug Rose was going to win this fight. And I kind of predicted that a little bit kind of with my heart, but mostly my head, because she's one of my favourite fighters. They both performed really well. I really enjoyed this fight. So Jessica Andrade obviously tried to make adjustments from the first fight, and she used a lot of head movement, and she tried to do a lot of feints and things like that to as a way of a defensive mechanism against Rose's jab and Rose's ability to pepper her with shots in the first fight. And it kind of worked to an extent, but I think with Andrade focusing so much on not getting hit, she forgot to kind of throw her own shots, sort of thing. And Rose was different because in the first fight it felt like she was moving around a lot, but in this fight she kind of just took the center of the cage more, and she was more kind of stationary, but just not station. No, actually, she wasn't stationary. She was still using a lot of movement, but the movements weren't as big. She wasn't covering as much of the octagon as she was in the first round. So yeah, a really good performance by Rose Namajunas. I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I would say is that third round, Andrade won. And if this fight was a 5-rounder like it was the first time around, and I know Andrade finished that fight in the second round, but if this was a 5-rounder, I'd be really, really, really interested to see how those final 2 rounds would have gone, because Andrade hurt Rose. I think she even knocked her down in the final round, and Rose had that massive mouse bruise under her eye. She had a cut on her nose. And she looked like she was gassing, and Andrade didn't. Andrade looked full of fucking beans. And so the momentum felt like it was shifting, but obviously this was the final round. So if this fight had a round 4 and a round 5, I don't know whether Rose would have won it, which is interesting because I think Rose now goes on to fight for the title, and Andrade I think is still up there. I don't think she did herself a lot of harm in the way she performed, and I think that a win or 2 for Andrade, she'll be back up into title contention, fighting for the title, and a third fight between her and Rose would be something that they could market without a problem. So I'd definitely like to see these 2 fight again somewhere down the line. But Rose against Weili Yan, that is literally going to be like, I can't express how fun that fight looks like it's going to be, because I think these 2 girls are the best strikers in that weight class, and it's kind of like it's like a boxer against a brawler, with Rose being the one who's kind of slick and good with movement, etc. And everything is kind of fundamentally sound. And Weili Yan also is a very, very high level striker, but she's got that brute kind of strength to her as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited for that fight. And the opening fight on the card, Ribas against Paige Van Zandt, that was just I mentioned earlier on in the prediction I made for this video, I hadn't really seen much of Ribas, and what I did see of her in that short space of time that they were fighting for a couple of minutes, like 2 minutes they fought for, she's fucking good, innit? Like, it was just a difference in levels that was clear as day. You could just see that one fighter was like, just her skill set and her arsenal and the tools that she's got, she just had so much more to choose from than Paige Van Zandt has in her locker, and it just showed. And like, Amanda Ribas just controlled that fight for 2 minutes, and eventually she submitted Paige Van Zandt. And yeah, so Dana White in the post-fight press conference was talking about Paige Van Zandt, and basically saying, yeah, she should go and check out the free market, and that was the objective of the UFC. This isn't the first time they've done it, and it won't be the last. A fighter wants to check out the free market, so they give them a really difficult fight that doesn't match well with their style. The thing is, with this fight, I don't know whether it just felt like Ribas is probably just better than Van Zandt in all areas, in all departments. So there's nothing for Van Zandt to target in terms of, all right, well, she's not very good at that, so that's what we're going to try and exploit. Like, Ribas looked crisp, kind of striking for the short period they were striking, and I understand she's a black belt in judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so that's why her fucking takedowns are probably better than Paige Van Zandt's, and then her ground game on the deck is better than Paige Van Zandt's. And then if you say her striking's better, it doesn't give Paige Van Zandt much of a chance to win this fight. So yeah, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with Paige Van Zandt. And also Reba, I think she's actually, she considers herself a strawweight. And if she can make 115 pounds, to add her to the girls in the 115 pound division, in that division, like, you got the bantamweights, the men's bantamweights. Obviously, you got the lightweights, and for the men, the lightweights is a bit different because it just feels like Khabib is just levels ahead of everyone. And this is not my criticism, my observation of the women's bantamweight division and the women's featherweight division. Sorry, let me start again. This is my observation of the women's featherweight, bantamweight with Amanda Nunes, and then the women's flyweight division with Shevchenko, because they're both just so far ahead of the rest of the pack that it's not, you don't, it's hard to get excited for them, their fights, because it's more of a showcase of their talent rather than the excitement that builds up for a fight where you think, I don't know who's going to fucking win this. The last time that happened for me in a women's fight was when Amanda Nunes fought Cyborg, or in those divisions, I should say. But the strawweight division with the 115 pound division, those girls, man, there's 5-10 of them, and if Amanda Ribas is able to make that weight, and that's the class that she wants to operate at, then bloody hell, that's just another dog in the dog pound, because there's a lot of dogs in that division and they're all fucking good. The last thing I just want to quickly touch on is this guy, Yuri Prozetska. He fought Volkanovsky, and I'd heard that he's a very, very, very capable fighter, and he's quite... It's weird that he hasn't got a Wikipedia page, but he's fought in a load of different organisations. I was listening to Big John McCarthy talk about it in his podcast, Weighing In, talking about how good he is, and it was a weird fight from him, because it just felt like as he was throwing, he just felt like he was off balance a lot. And yeah, he's unorthodox, and he just kept kind of like holding his glove like this, kind of but lower down, kind of in front of his cock, and then he'd throw a punt. Like, it was just odd, and he wouldn't make eye contact with Volkanovsky often. And actually in the first round, I think Ozdemir won that round, and it looked like he rocked Prozetska a couple of times. Prozetska said in his post-fight interview he wasn't very happy with his performance, but he won. He knocked out Volkanovsky, who obviously has had a title shot, who is a solidified kind of top 10 fighter in the light heavyweight division. I just hope that they don't just chuck this Prozetska guy into a fight with someone who is a well-rounded, well-experienced, really good light heavyweight, and kind of stop his development. I think there's enough guys in the light heavyweight division that are in or around the title picture. The division itself has kind of ground to a halt with the disputes that John Jones has been having with the UFC recently. When or if he does come back, I'd see a rematch with Dominic Reyes. You got Santos coming back against what's his fucking name? I hate it when I do this, when I forget fighters' names. Glover Teixeira. So I think Santos is fighting Teixeira. So if Santos wins that fight, then he's back in the picture, because his fight against John Jones was quite close. And then you've got Jan Blachowicz waiting around as well. So you've got a line of people that have done, a relevant amount of work to justify giving them a title shot. So there's no rush with this guy. So I'd like to see them... it's not their job to develop fighters. When people come from other organizations, a lot of the time they get treated quite harshly by the UFC just to prove how good or what caliber their talent is within their organization. I remember the similar sort of thing happened with Eddie Alvarez when he joined. He was given fucking difficult fight after difficult fight, and he managed to win the belt. So it's not kind of totally impossible, but I just would like to see this guy kind of just moved along a little bit slowly. until the title picture clears up, and then give him a test and then give him kind of more difficult fights. But it's not my fucking job, and they won't listen to me, so a bit pointless really of me talking about it. That's it really. That's kind of all I wanted to cover off. But yeah, it was fun. I think the big takeaway is I personally feel like Jorge Masvidal, even if he does have a full camp, I don't know how much chance he has of beating Kamara Usman. Yeah, the fight was boring, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that if we find it boring, we don't appreciate how good the fighters are in the fight. With regards to Volkanovski, Max Holloway, yeah, I think Max Holloway won, but it wasn't a robbery, and I kind of understand why Volkanovski got the nod. Peter Yan and Jose Aldo, yes, Peter Yan won. It was expected. However, I don't consider him the unified champion until he beats Aljamain Sterling. Rose Namajunas, she won. I'm glad she won. However, the momentum was shifting, and Andrade won that third round. And if this was a 5-round fight, I don't know whether Rose Namajunas would have come home the winner. But I'm glad she won, because her against Wei Li Jian is going to be a fucking amazing fight. Rebus, I mean, that's just another talent, so definitely going to keep an eye out for her next fights. And yeah, that's it. That's me done. So feel free to like, share, subscribe, all of that good stuff. And yeah, that's it really. I'll catch you guys next time. I'm going to go and have a shower. Going to go and have a shower now. Bye guys.